Benny Kuragase. Benny, after his BTech in Civil Engineering from the College of Engineering, Trivandrum, started his career in 1984 and received the basic lessons in architecture under the tutelage of Laurie Baker. Later, he won the Charles Wallace India Trust Award to undertake an MA in Conservation Studies at the University of York. He has received his PhD from Indian Institute of Technology, Madras. Benny is known more for his work for design of the public buildings and the transplantation of buildings in the Kerala section of Craft Village, known as Darshana Chitra in Chennai. Major architectural works include the Muziris Heritage Project, Institute of Palliative Medicine in Calicut, the design of tsunami-affected villages of Chinnagudi and Karangambadi in Nagapattinam district, the Springdale Heritage Resort in Vandiperiyar and the Anantya Resort in Kanyakumari. Benny has authored the book Conserving Timber Structures in India and one of the editors of the book Guidelines for Preparation of a Heritage Management Plan. He has offered his services as consultant to UNDP, UNESCO, various state government and other organizations. Please give a big round of applause and welcome a speaker.
Okay. What I'm going to do today is mainly trying to look at sustainable architecture, how I see it, because that is mainly the topic which I'm trying to look into this thing. I'll just put my presentation into some questions. We talk about various things about sustainability, but how sustainability can be brought into design. For that, I'm not looking at the LEED rating on the green buildings or all these things, Graha rating or any of those things, because I think architecture is very complex. There are many dimensions: social, cultural, economic, political, technical, and these ratings, and just to give marks on how a building is sustainable by giving some points doesn't look very great. So I'm just trying to look at it from a different point of view, and I'm not going to talk too much about sustainability, just 2-3 facts. 1/6% of the world's population use 35% of resources. And sustainability has undergone changes over the years. What is sustainable 35 years ago? What is sustainable now? There is a difference. 35 years ago, labor was cheap, but now labor is expensive. So if you're looking at economic sustainability, what was sustainable 35 years and now has changed. And what is sustainable Rajasthan, what is sustainable Assam, and what is sustainable in Kerala is very different. Bamboo might be sustainable in Assam, might not be sustainable in Rajasthan. So it varies. So you can't have an overall rating or any of this thing for the whole of India. So I'm just trying to give some guidelines of some of how I see sustainability. And I'm not going, there are definitions which you all might know. This is not a talk on sustainability in that. But one of the important points is that economic sustainability, social sustainability, and environment. When the movement came, 1970s, energy crisis came, it was seen more as an environmental sustainability. But later on, economic sustainability and social sustainability became very important. I'm just trying to give some guidelines what sustainable architecture should be. First thing, one of the parameters could be architecture should be reversible. Now, what is architecture being reversible? This building, what you see, is a mud building built with mud blocks, earth blocks, and they are interlocking earth blocks. Not this. So there is no mortar in it, there is no mud mortar, there is no cement mortar. The advantage of such a building, if you dismantle this building, you can reuse the earth blocks. But if you build a building with cement and earth blocks, then it is not reversible. Can't redo. But if it is a traditional building built with lime mortar, the bricks are reusable. Timber in a building is reusable. Steel can be reusable, but the kind of buildings that we build, this building, concrete building for example, is irreversible because this can be used only for landfills. Of course, in 2004, in a conference in Perth, I've seen how concrete waste is converted into coarse aggregate and fine aggregate or sand. Even 15 years down the line, I'm not seeing such a machine in India. So these things are there. So this building. So I use a lot of timber in this building. Timber can be reused. So that is what I mean. Architecture should be reversible. So again, the backside of the same building has a lot of timber. Of course, inside is plastered. It has tiles. So most of the buildings, there is a trade-off involved in all the design of all buildings. You can't, if you try to design a 100% sustainable building, it will be only a model building. This has to be livable. If you try to give importance to the social aspects or social sustainability, certain compromises have to be made in environmental sustainability, or when you give to economic sustainability, certain compromises will have to be made. So there is a trade-off involved in all these things. This is the mud blocks, where I said no mortar is used in this building. The second parameters which I think sustainable architecture should look at, one of the criteria parameters is conservation of technology and crafts. We have a lot of traditional technologies, we have a lot of traditional crafts, and this is the Chettinad tiles or Arthamudi tiles. In Europe, this technique was very common. If you just Google Victorian tiles, you will get the same kind of tiles. So this is not something which the British would have introduced it. So this is a building which is 100 years old. This is a building which I have done where it is done. Also the traditional plastering, which is where you can see the mirror reflection. It is called Chettinad plaster. In Rajasthan, there is a similar technique. The way it is being done, there is a difference, but it is called Aresh. Similarly, various parts in India as well as in different parts across the world, the similar plastering technique was used. This is a very simple technique where you can see the face. No painting, nothing is required. So you have to look at the overall cost. And this is the way the Chettinad plaster is being done. We have used this plaster in many buildings. When we had to use this technique of plaster in one of the buildings, last time it was used was in 1960. This technique has died now. So some of the architects working in my office try to work with the craftsmen, and we found that two masons who can do it, and this was one of the masons. He was working as a coolie at that time, and this is a 7-layer of plastering. I'm not going into the technique, but I think traditional techniques and crafts this is the Chettinad tiles which I said earlier. You will find I use these tiles in many of my projects, and not even a single unit of electricity is required. This is a handmade tile. There is no firing, and it is cheap. It is only 50-55 rupees per square foot, including laying. So it's one of the cheapest things, even cheaper than the ceramic tiles what you get. And these techniques like the red oxide or the green, this is the green oxide plastering, flooring plastering, and this is used as a bathroom, which is very, very good. So conservation of technology, using some of these traditional techniques, your buildings can be sustainable. Another important criteria is locally available materials. If you use locally available materials, then your buildings tend to be sustainable. Because less transportation, less processing. This is a resort which we have designed. I mean, it's run by the CTH group of hotels, quiet by the river. So, I mean, they sell the room for 15,000 rupees a night, kind of thing. But the stone is not even quarried stone, it's stone picked up from the site. Randomly picked up from the site. Of course, the lifting of the stone to the first floor, and by the time we did the resort, we didn't have enough stone to, you would have to go into the next compound to get the stone. So we had to design with the brick. So the entire resort is mostly built with the stones which has picked up from the site. So we use this, and that has become the USP of the site, which is there. So you can see the stone, you can see the river, right? And this is again the Chettinad tiles or the Arthamudi tiles which I was talking about. And of course it uses the timber which is recycled, which I will be talking as we go along. So this is again one of the cottages. There is a swimming pool which overlooks the Kerala Western Ghat forest and all those things. So use locally available materials is very important. I'm trying to give different parameters. Use timber as a building material. Now the latest research, latest argument is that timber is the most sustainable building material which you can use in buildings. If you use more timber in buildings, building will become more sustainable. Now I'll try to substantiate that argument. One is timber can be regrown, timber can be reused, and timber has less embodied energy because you use it. It is available locally, you cut it, very little processing. You don't need the processing of, say, aluminium, which is very high energy intensity, or you don't need the high processing of the cement industry, which is required. Now, talking about the global warming and sustainable architecture, climate change, and all those things, all these years we have been learning about it, but all the steps which are suggested or which are all these green buildings, whatever, if you have the platinum, just assume every building built in India or across the world is a platinum rated building. The global warming or the climate change is not going to reverse. Only thing it is going to happen, it is going to slow down the process. What is going to happen to your children will happen to your grandchildren. There is nothing, with no step suggested by any of these measures which will reverse the process. And to come into that, it is a serious situation. For example, 280 was the carbon dioxide level, ppm or something, which was before the Industrial Revolution. Now the figure in 2008 is 411. The other day I was coming out of the Chennai airport, there which shows the carbon dioxide content in the air, which says 427. And in Delhi they say it will be even more during the Deepavali times. 1000 is very dangerous. And they say the respiratory, one of the major causes of casualties is the respiratory test. This is one of the consequences. Now, many of the scientists used to say by 2100, the seawater will rise by 1 meter. Now, during the last 2018 October meet in Korea, where the 3,000 scientists met on the IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and they said, if 1.5 degrees centigrade becomes 2 degrees centigrade in 2 years, in 12 years, sorry, not 12 years, the polar bear will be wiped up, so many insects will be wiped up, habitations of many of these things will be wiped out. So it's a very serious situation. So IPCC or some of the studies says that 1 meter rise will happen in 2100, but there are studies, scientists who says that it will be 2 meters and 2.7 meters. If 2 meter happens, 85% of Venice will be underwater. If 1 meter happens, quite a bit of Kochi, Chennai, any of the coastal cities will be touched, many of the areas will be underwater. The cities will look very different from now. Now, the climate change is happening at a much faster rate than what is predicted. We were supposed to control it. Every country is supposed to follow certain norms. It's not happening. I mean, we have a president in the US who said that climate change is a hoax and it's a ploy against US. And we have a president in Brazil who during the election campaign said that he will open the Amazon forest for cultivation, and he became the president, he or she, I don't remember, became the president, and you see the Amazon fire happening. It might be a calculated risk which is happening. So all these things, so if 1 meter rise, which is the minimum which is predicted, happens in 2000, it can happen in 2060, 1 meter rise, which is a serious situation, which is going to happen. And why the building designers and architects and the planners have to be responsible is that this 40% of the greenhouse emissions, the buildings are responsible, or the activities connected with the buildings are responsible. So this problem is somewhere around the corner. It is a problem that we have to fight, we have to realize. I thought my grandchildren will have to face this problem, but now I'm quite sure my son will have to face this problem. I don't think I will be allowed to see this problem happening, but definitely I know my son is going to face this problem. Now all these steps which are suggested by all these people is nothing is that it's only going to slow down the process. Now what is timber when used as a building material? When timber is used as a building material, the carbon is not emitted as carbon dioxide. You have studied carbon cycle in your schools. which means if timber decays, carbon dioxide is emitted. If timber is used as a firewood, carbon dioxide is emitted. Then only the cycle will be over. But the moment you use it as a building material, in a building as a roof, carbon dioxide is not emitted. So the more and more timber is used in buildings, only way you can store timber is you can't cut the timber and store in a warehouses. There is no point in making it. The moment you use more and more timber as a building material, the advantage is that trees are the only things which convert carbon dioxide into oxygen. And you store it in buildings. By using timber in buildings, we will reverse the overall change. Which is one thing. So one of the major arguments which I make, which one of the reasons why I use extensively timber. I am not using teak in many of my buildings. I use eucalyptus. I use firewood. Because each of these timber can serve a purpose. Everything need not be teak. Everything need not be jack or expensive imported timber. So I use extensive timber. This building which I've done in one of the hill stations, built almost entirely fluorous timber. The walls are timber. I use glass. I normally don't use glass in our tropical climate, but since it's a hill station, I use the roof, the columns are timber, the roof is timber. This area, since the water is coming, we have used a little bit granite, railing is timber. You can see the entirely timber, the ceiling is timber, the rafters are timber. So when I design a building like this, I think my building will be carbon neutral at the earliest possible time. Because you are storing carbon dioxide, you are storing carbon in the buildings. I'm not arguing for cutting down forests and building it. There are enough wasteland available in India and all over the world where you can grow trees. On average, per capita trees in Canada is 8,000, India is only 28. And if you drive across Tamil Nadu where I live, a lot of wasteland is available. It's not a desert. But you can see acres and acres and miles where no vegetation you will see in those areas. So my argument is grow trees. I try to do some calculations. If you build a 1,000 square feet house, if you have 4 trees and the building has a life of 75 years, it will be carbon neutral. So whatever the timber you use, it will be done. So you can try to do these calculations, but unfortunately, these calculations we need. So this building is a restaurant, only very little is done with masonry portion, and we try to use this thing. Another important thing is used to recycle materials. Because one material which is there, reuse it. This building, the tiles are reused thing, old tiles which has been reused, very cheap. It is economically very sustainable, thermally very comfortable. All the doors and windows is reused. Even this columns can be reused, and these windows are reused. This door is reused, taken from demolished buildings which are demolished. So I'm showing one photograph, but I use similar things in many of my projects. So this one is Krishani Doshi, the writer and dancer. Architecture should be suitable to the climate. In 1920s, when the modern architecture movement came, people thought that we don't have to design according to the climate because we have air conditioning technology. We can create an internal environment artificially. But over the period, the air conditioning causes damage to the ozone layer, the gas which has been used, and also we need electricity or energy to sustain it. And the production of electricity causes greenhouse gas emissions. So the thought process has to change. 1920s, nobody thought about it. Energy crisis came in only in 1970s. People started talking about it. Before that, the thought process was that, no, we have a technology where we can control, why should we design according to the climate? This building in Trivandrum city, you can see the Padmanabha Swami temple, one of the richest temples. This is a palace. You can see the timber walls having the overhang. The sun's rays doesn't fall onto the walls because the overhang is there to protect. The interior is good, and the overhang protects the timber work. This is blacksmith's house in my village, built with mud and done with thatched roof. Again has the same principle, overhang. The roof overhang is there, protect the mud walls from heavy rainfall like in Kerala. These principles of architecture, building according to the local climate is same. But the kind of buildings which are coming up in cities can be in Jakarta, can be in Peru, can be in Germany, is what we see. See the kind. There is no contextual design, there is no relationship with the local climate, and which is very unfortunate. So we try to design according to the local climate. Of course, many of our buildings are air conditioned, but we try to make sure that the cost of air conditioning is kept to the maximum. We use various methods for it. And again, this is the recycled timber which is used. Then the fourth, another dimension, architecture should be suitable to the social and cultural aspects of it. This is a traditional house in Kutch area. I told you we did a house in Kutch, we did a village in this, redesigned a village in Kutch. So you can see the crack which has happened with the Bhuj earthquake. So you put a door and you have these niches on either side. This is very much a part of the cultural requirement of the families. They store these vessels, very much a requirement. This is the dowry. Any of you have been to Kutch, you will see they proudly display the vessels. Hardly they will be using it once in a while, but this is a cultural requirement of the families. So we designed a new village. It is the Malayalam Manorama Chapredi. Malayalam Manorama newspaper sponsored it. And we designed this a new house. We did not give the door on the corner. Normally, you tend to give the door on the corner looking at the efficiency of the building, but you don't have to look at the efficiency always. You have to look at the social and cultural aspect. The door is taken away, so we have given a place for storage. The built-in seat we have added. So when I went and visited the house after some time, we found that they were able to use this house. So one minor detail, how it can make to the, so they have blocked the windows, which is happening. We added the storage also to give them. We have designed, when I did the Latur earthquake and visited the village after 10 years, I found the toilets they are not using, they are using it as storage. So all these things will happen, but it's the duty of the designer to give it to the, so I'm trying to give certain parameters which is very, very important for sustainability in architecture. Now, vernacular architecture is very important to be used in the sustainable architecture. We should take lessons from our own architectural past rather than borrowing from the Western examples. We made a lot of huge mistake by borrowing from the Western examples, having an international style of modern architecture. We should not commit that mistake again, and we should use. So, Padmanabhan Palace, roof is the most predominant element in a traditional building. We say roofless millions. I want to construct a roof, but in the modern buildings, roof is not there. All these IIT buildings, there is no roof. And you blame the concrete for the heat inside, but it is not the concrete alone which comes. The walls also transmit. There is no sunshade, there is no overhang to protect the walls from sun's rain. And you see the roof is what you see. But in the modern buildings, you don't see the roof at all. So you see this building which is a veranda, the sun's rays never falls on the inside walls. But all these glass buildings and IT buildings which you see, the sun's rays morning till evening, the sun falls on the walls. They also transmit heat inside. I don't know why people don't understand this basic principle. You have all these heat transferred inside and then use a cheap economical or sustainable, and you call it a platinum rated building. It doesn't make any sense as far as I'm concerned. And this is what we do. I mean, what we do in our buildings. And the courtyards is one of the features. And when you have a typical climate like in Kerala, you need ventilation at the floor level. You see this building, ventilation comes right at the floor level. Now we never open the windows in modern buildings. So this is a building which we have done in Chennai, and you have the courtyard, you have the roofs. We use roofs as a predominant element in our architecture or buildings, and we use verandas extensively in buildings. So in this building, the sun's rays come, but the inside wall is cool, so the inside doesn't have to be cool. I mean, it's thermally comfortable. You switch on the air conditioning only 2 months a year. And this is a resort which we have done. Again, I mean, these tiles are recycled. Again, extensive use of timber in these buildings. But it has a feature of the traditional architecture. Vernacular architecture is being done. And this is another view. And this is the same building which is coming with, the same resort where we have done these things. You can use all these kinds of natural materials. We have tried to do many buildings where we don't use the modern materials, we avoid melamine, we use wax polishing and other materials, but they are expensive. Because many of these eco-friendly materials are expensive, which is this is a resort. And this is a building for which this is a water tank, and this is a small shrine. Again, vernacular architectural element comes into play, and this is a tank, and you can see the timber pillars and this is again the Chettinad tiles. Traditionally, we have the verandas in Tamil Nadu. This building is in Chennai, and these niches are very common, again recycled windows. So I'm just showing all these things or combinations which you try to use in a building makes the building sustainable. What we try to do, all these projects is what we do in our office, but we are trying to give different kind of architecture. So when you sit on the floor and the wind movement is very critical for thermal comfort, you need to give window at the lowest level. If you give window at the normal sea level, the wind will go above your, when you sit on the floor, it will go above your head. It doesn't make any sense. So we just try to design according to the usage. Again, this is recycled timber chettinad. These two windows are made, this door, windows, everything is recycled from, this one particular one. So we use a combination of these techniques by reusing it. The stone also, the pillars also we have collected from old buildings. This mat which I picked up 2 rupees a square foot, this is used for drying paddy. So I just thought, why can't it be used as a, why should we have gypwood ceiling now? And instead of making the mirror, fix the mirror onto the wall, so we use these niches are very common, and the bathroom is tiled only in a very, this timber which I used is eucalyptus, which I bought at the firewood cost. Now the other important thing when you look at sustainability, we don't want to look purely from an environmental sustainability, the architecture has to be more human. See, the thing is that I think the vernacular architecture, the architecture which used to be there, which we see in the villages, has a huge human content or social content. When 1920s, the modern architecture movement came, the argument which the modern architects put forward, here we have a technology where we can go high, we can go with higher spans, we can take any shape, we can solve the housing problem. But what happened as a result was not solving the housing problem. It was the developers' thing, the profit motive. The social content drained away, and the profit motive or the profit was the main thing. So architecture, the social content, it's very, very important to bring back the social content in architecture or the human content in architecture. When we try to practice sustainable architecture, maybe we try to do, we want to bring this back into our architecture, which we do. This is the Institute of Palliative Medicine, which we did in Calicut Medical College compound. And this is a hospital, where the terminally ill cancer patients, where we try to use the jalis, and we use various colors in the hospital. We did not want it, because when we discussed with the doctors and the volunteers and the patients, they said, my question to them was, where do you want to spend your last 15 days of your life? This is a terminally ill cancer patient. They said, nobody wanted to spend in a hospital. Everybody said, we want to spend the last 15 days in our home. So how can we design a hospital which looks like a home? So our design concept started with that. And with that, so we added colors. So this patient, we added windows. It's a government hospital. It's attached to the Calicut Medical College. It's a government medical college. So there are limitations. You can't give private rooms, and these are not 5-star hotel rooms. Many of the hospitals which are run looks like a 5-star hotel room. So we did. Why he lies is a cancer patient. He looks out through the window, which is very, very important. I asked him, how do you feel? He doesn't know that I have designed this building. So I was taking rounds and I asked him, because it's a huge campus we have designed. See, he said, half my illness is gone when I came here. That is the best compliment that you can get when you try to get it. So you get this, so you try to, so you see all the colors. So we did some with the yellow colors, ochre colors, some with the blue, some with the green, some with the cream. So we just added, normally hospital is white always. Why do the hospital walls have to be white? So we try to look at, we use only cement flooring, because one of the other criteria, these are poor patients who come to a government medical college. We said we should not put any facilities in the hospital which is not found in their houses. Because if they find very posh and look, they will feel completely alienated. So we went with the cement finishes and everything. Only thing is that the bathrooms have tiles. Even the corridors, hospitals have tiles. We avoided it purely that why should they feel the hospital or corridors should have white tiles? So we avoided it and we did this. And this is a historic area. We did a renovation of a market, which I'll be showing. This chapel building looks like the advertisement holding for Asian Paints, which is coming. So we were scared it doesn't fit into that place. So we said that it should look something, at least the color should be changed. We told the community and the market, because when we were doing the renovation of the market. Now if you go there, the chapel, we were scared, Kerala is very political. Now if you go there, the chapel is demolished and you will find a replica of the old chapels being there. Which shows community understands that there is a social component, or the cultural component or the human content is coming. We never expected that the community will come forward and say, please demolish our chapel, we would like to go with the old chapel which is happening. We did a project in Tarangambadi, I've done various projects in disaster management things. This is the Tarangambadi, this was the site which was given to us, completely waterlogged, which is there. I don't want to go into the details. So if you did the 2.7 meter or 2.8 meter water, that is the level which water came into during the tsunami, only a very little portion where the water will not enter. The rest of the area, the water will enter. So this is the mapping we have done, and this is what is happening in the villages. We were building this, rebuilding this village, and we had to be in the village for 2-3 years, and we saw this water coming. The streets became like rivers or streams during a rainy season. And this is the kind, I mean, Indian real situation is where 70% of the houses doesn't have toilets. You know, I mean, even in this place and the houses, only 5% have toilets. In Tamil Nadu, which is far better than North India, Bihar or Uttar Pradesh or any of these things. And this is in 2004 and 2005. This is not very far. I mean, this is the reality of the Indian situation. And this is the main arterial road which goes into another 3-4, you can see the water chain. This is a photograph I took seeing that the floods is coming. And we discussed with the community. We looked at various options, various color options with the community. We tried to empower the community. We wanted the community to have control over the housing project. We wanted them to decide. And we had to do 1,500 houses in Tranquebar, and we said 1,500 houses, 1,500 designs. Something which has never been attempted anywhere in the world according to my knowledge. But we designed that we will identify the house owner and design each house customized. This is what has happened. When you design houses for each of the family, they came and did the puja. It is a public housing project coming up in a new location. We filled up this, but they wanted to do the puja, and we wanted to get 16. I mean, Tarangambadi cluster 16, 5th house, Velu, Mukhilakshmi. We wanted to make sure gender equality is kept, because that is also one of the sustainable development goals that India has signed. So we have to look at things in a much broader sense. It might not be possible in all projects, but you try to do it to the maximum, and you can see people doing pujas, because in Tamil Nadu it is an important thing. When you put the main door of the house, they come and do the pujas, you can see, and they do the touring. So you can see they come and do the touring, and they get involved in making the jalis, and we allowed them to, why should all the houses look the same? So we did the houses, large numbers with different plans and different setbacks. Now if you, 10 years later I visited, they have compounded, added compound wall, somebody was rich, did this, you can see the house, and you can see another house, the roads have been built, somebody has added addition to, you will find even this, somebody has joined 2 houses, so I've added this fancy compound wall, you can see this house. I mean, you don't see how the house is, original house is, but I think this is a success because the people owned up their houses, because they invested in those housing projects because of it. I just thought there were 2 books which came out of this project, and this was one of the German architects who interviewed one of the masons. We were lucky that this architect worked on our project. Many things are well done. However, there are some things that could have been done much better. For example, the orientation of the bathroom and the toilet. They should not face the neighbor's house. We had to build compound walls, and then there is a quality of construction which is in some cases poor, better of course than in many other villages that we saw. However, not always satisfying. Who I would like to build my house with? I would call this architect again if you would like to plan a single small house. I tell him about the toilet and the quality, but I think he goes for brick projects in cities, and this is why I would call the mason. I mean, this is what the German architect said. I mean, this is the contradiction that you face when you work on projects. I mean, you do the one end, you do projects for the rich, on the other end you have to do for the poor. What we try to do is we try to balance it, because unless to run the office we need the rich people's projects, because we don't get any funding from any of the agencies or any of this. This is a project where we are involved with Narayana, one of the initial, making Alappuzha an attractive place to be. It is now, you see the canals, it is like drain, smelling, full of rain. I mean, there is no fish growth, nothing is there. I mean, fulfilled all the rain, everything. So we started. So there is no point in conserving the buildings along the canal unless, because we are doing the master plan for Alleppey now, unless the canals are cleaned up. So we propose the boat ride has to be done. December 4th, we will be riding the boats along these canals. So 23 boat jetties are being planned along the canals. So what is looking like this is looking something like this. What is used to look like this is looking like this. So changes are happening. I mean the canals. I mean we are cleaning up the canals and all those things, and you can see how all this plant growth, everything has been removed. Fishing has started again. I put more photographs because it was not a stage managed affair. Now if you go to the place, you can see people doing fishing in the village, which was completely forgotten at one point of time. You can see even people swimming. And we know that water is still dangerous, but still people jump into the water. So people remember, this was once upon a time, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, this was used as a canal. So we told Narayan and I told the community that we will give the water back. So there is a social part involved in it. It has to be maintained. It has to be maintained by the community. And community should have control over this. That will happen only when this thing is there. So it's very, very important to do this. Now, 50% of our projects is conservation and 50% of our projects is new buildings. So we do a lot of conservation of buildings, and I think conservation, normally people take old buildings or historic buildings as a liability. We don't want to see it as a liability, we want to see it as an economic asset, we want to convert, we want to see it as a product which can. So this is a small house which in a village, 28 lakhs, one person bought it and he spent 40 lakhs on it. And 5 hotel rooms are there. He's selling it. You just Google Mangalam Heritage. Mangalam Heritage or Mangalam Heritage, you will see it. It has become a 5-room hotel. Per room, 3,500 rupees is the charge, and they rent out the place. So I meet the owner and ask him how is it doing. He said economically it is quite feasible. There are writers who wants to take it for 2 weeks, come to a traditional village, come there. One couple, local village couple cooks for them. This was courtyard. We did not make a change. So this is one area where heritage is used as a tool for development. Heritage is not a liability. We neglect our historic part in our cities. We neglect our old buildings. We neglect our historic buildings. Conservation is very, very positive. That is the message. And this is a small courtyard. And this is one of the synagogues which is there. And we have worked on 2 synagogues. Synagogues is the prayer halls of the Jewish community. There is a synagogue in Bombay as well, in various parts. So this was the completion of the synagogue when we got it. This was used as a kitchen, there were grills, and inside there was even toilets. And we took over the project. It was basically an encroachment which has happened. We conserved the building, and you can see the before and after pictures. And this is a synagogue which was built in 1860, which is there. So the pathway, now it has been converted into a museum. It is open to the public. The museum talks about the history of the Jews in Kerala. So that is the topic of the this thing. And this is a photograph of the synagogue taken in the 1950s. So this heikel, and you can see all these chandeliers, this heikel was missing when we took over the building. The original heikel is sitting in Jerusalem Museum. It has been smuggled out of India, just like our peacock prawn has been taken out, Kohinoor diamond has been taken out, some of our plus sculptures and artistic works have been taken out of India. We are never going to get back. Of course, we got one Chola bronze very recently from Australia. It was now with this thing. So now it is sitting there. We wrote to the museum, Jerusalem Museum, we got these drawings, which they took 537 centimeters, 5.37. And based on this, one architect made a drawing of the heikel, and Craftsman started working on it. Because we try to see it in a different way. It is not Jewish heritage. It is Kerala's heritage, it is India's heritage, which has been smuggled out of India. So we like to get it back. So now the heikel is back in its position. This is open, you can see the panels. There is some videos and things that we put. All these timber work that we can see in the museum panels, which has been there, and this is the connecting link of the building. And this is the Palladian Dutch Palace, another building, Cochin Prime Minister's official residence, which we got to convince this is the before and after. And you can see the sash windows, you can see the steep roofs, which is the Dutch has constructed these things. So we strengthened the building, and this is before and after of the front portion, and we have converted again this into a museum which talks about the Portuguese, Dutch and the British history, and you can see the exhibits coming up on this. The exhibits are there, and this is a new addition which has been made because a museum is converted. You need toilets, you need a small restaurant, so we have converted this into a, and conservation is very positive. We can have new buildings close to historic building, but you should gel with those buildings. Many people come and ask, is this also, they mistake it as a old building, and you can see a lot of concrete additions we have removed. This is a market we have done. All this intangible heritage is disappearing, and a lot of old buildings in one market. This is the Pottopuram market, and this was a photograph taken by a US architect working with me. She was very excited. We never get excited by seeing this photograph. For her it was very exciting. It was jute and all these things stored in jute bags is a new thing for her. So she showed it, and you can see this kind of activity is taking place. Just look at this building. So we wanted to conserve the market, develop the market, use it as a development project. So we worked on the market, worked with each of the shop owners. 150 shops we have renovated. People have renovated. You see this building is looking, you can see the badam tree, the same tree is looking like this is looking like that. And we can change the waterfront. Some restaurants have come up, amphitheatre has come up. This is very important to have good public design in our places, which the local community can use. And this is the boat jetty and some trees, and people have taken over and having various programs in these public places. Because our public design in some domain which we have neglected completely, which is happening. The tourism is one of the elements which can give in revenue into the thing. There are a lot of our folk performances which is happening. We have built folk performance places. One of the projects which we are doing next month, the Chief Minister is going to inaugurate this project, is the oldest mosque in India. We are conserving this, a photograph of the oldest mosque which is there, but now it is looking like this. It's 1,400 years old according to the mosque people. Historians say it is the 11th century. Even if it is the 11th century, it's still the oldest mosque which is there. So all these domes, minarets, all these metal sheets and concrete roofs have been added much to it. It was not there as part of it. The first photograph, it used to look something like this. So now it is looking something like this. So this is the proposal. We are removing all the early additions, but the problem is that existing mosque has 2,000 capacity. When all the early additions, concrete and steel and rooms and minarets are demolished, it will come to 300. So we suggested that we can have a basement, which the mosque committee approved, and so this is the proposal which is going to. So this all shows that heritage means development. People are coming forward to look at heritage in a different way. This is how the interiors for us. Since the way mosque is going to be in the basement, this might be the first basement mosque in the country. I'm not sure. So when it was, the work was announced, it was one of the newspapers covered it as the first basement mosque in the country. We never used to say, but our problem was how to convert a car park look like a mosque. So we tried to did a lot of research and tried to look, so this is how it will look once the work is completed, and so we worked on it. So I just want to finish in 2-3 minutes. One of the why we get involved in conservation is because when you do conservation of buildings, you are recycling the whole building, which is very economical, very sustainable. There is huge saving in materials because we have a lot of shortage of the buildings that we do. Even the greenest building makes a huge impact on the environment. But when you conserve a building, it uses more labor, less materials, there is less carbon dioxide which is emitted, less travel, green field is conserved. So, and conserving a historic building or even an ordinary building. Now office takes some buildings which have been built in the late 80s and 90s. Those buildings become obsolete in 20 years, not technically. There is a Spencer Plaza in Chennai. When I came to Chennai 20 years ago, everybody used to go there. Now nobody wants to go there. There are no shops, it has become obsolete. There are so many projects like that. What will you do with such a project? Concrete buildings, so you have to conserve, you have to recycle the whole building. So you have to try to do, because the original use which was intended 20 years ago, modern malls have come, the old malls have disappeared. You can just, the cities where you come from, you will know. Bombay, some of the old malls, when the new malls come up, the old malls disappear. Nobody goes to the old malls. Can we, if we just go and put them, we can only use for landfilling. So is it sustainable? So what are we looking at? So that is why we just try to do. And we try to see heritage as an economic asset, as I said below. And we will, because conservation uses less materials and more labor, and it is very simple. It is the greenest building. And even if you build the building with the cheapest technology, even if you make it very cost effective, conserving a building is much more economical. Much more better. You have to convert it into a building which is usable, and this is exactly how much greener technology is used to make an impact on that one. Greenest building is one which is already existing, and that is what we try to do. And conserving our historic cities is smart growth, and we can have smart cities only by conserving our historic cities. So what I try to give, this is the last slide, 45 minutes I took. What we are trying to do in our office is trying to look at sustainability in a different way. We debate about each project that we do. There is a trade-off involved because we have to run it as a practice. So there is a trade-off involved, but we try to apply many of these basic principles. We don't take inspiration from the LEED rating or the Graham rating. We don't follow them at all. But we think that the kind of buildings that we do are much greener because, and much more sustainable, and trying to make less impact on the environment. And the kind of scale is starting from a 100 square feet building to a city scale, or conservation of a large market, or in Alleppey we are doing the conservation of the Alleppey historic fort. Like that, what we try to do is part of it. So there is a lot of process involved in it, and so you have to learn from the vernacular because we should not borrow from the best. The best lessons from the vernacular you should learn, but you should try to adapt it to your conditions and then do. Not adopt it. You buy an Innova car for 18 lakhs and somebody has to get towards the back, somebody has to get out. It makes it good for me to have a car like that because in Europe the back seats are meant for vegetables. So but in India it is put forward as a passenger car and you buy an expensive car. So all these years we are adapted to the old existing things. I think we need to look at sustainability, sustainable architecture with a different perspective. might not have been able to elaborate in a detailed manner, but I might have put some questions to you that it is time that we need to rethink about the kind of green buildings or sustainable buildings that we are having. Thank you. Any questions? If it is there, we can.
Any question?
Sir, I want to ask a question regarding the foundation laying process for any building. This is in the context of the Kerala floods and all which happened. There was a lot of debate about quarrying and mining ban and everything. I came back again. And so there was something which I read about rammed earth method which can be used as foundation, but then I just wanted to know that how sustainable is it, also how cost effective is it, also environment wise, is it as as much as a better option as it is made out to be?
Yeah. See, when you say you use earth buildings, just assume somebody builds building with earth as a walling material, doesn't become sustainable. We have to see it in a very integrated manner. Because 15%, walls is only 15% of the cost of it. In some other cases it might become 20%, but walls is only one of the components of it. Doors, windows, floors, plastering, foundation, roofs, for 15%. So when you reduce 5% or 6% say 25% of the cost of a wall building. It doesn't make a huge impact on the overall, but it still makes. It's still. I'm not saying that it's less important. Now, the moment when you add earth, when you have an earth building, the moment you add, make it stabilized by adding 5% or 7% cement to it. You understand? Adding 5%, it can, the sustainability can get worse. Because you have to include that cost. But mud buildings without adding cement, I lived in a Trivandrum city, I lived 20 years, and we still have that house. It's a 2-story, sun-dried bricks mud house. 2-story, 15 or 4, which my father owned. Still we have the building. Hundreds of buildings are across the country without adding cement. The thing is that you have to see what is the strength required for a building, what is the material, and you have to look at it from a different perspective. In India, we don't look at it. We think the more stronger, the better it is. That is the public's mind, and many of the architects and engineers' mind is also like that. There is a famous architect in the UK said, give me a hat and a roof, I will last forever. Mud buildings. If it is protected from the rain and it's protected with a raised plane, it will last forever. It may not be ramped up, but ramped up has more strength. You can build 2 stories or 3 stories with a ramped up wall. Also, one of the other things, problem with many of these techniques, so you need trained manpower to implement it, and if you don't have the trained manpower, there could be a problem. Most of the people like Costco, Lorry Baker, me, etc., we work with trained manpower. But it cannot be multiplied very easily. So that is a problem, and social acceptability becomes a problem. People all wants to have concrete houses and modern status looking houses. Why do people buy Audi and Benz and BMW? I mean, it's more or less the same thing is available even in a small car, but it's mainly for status. You want to have that, and people talk about it. So social status becomes a very important thing. So there will be so many reasons why many of these techniques did not become popular. What my thing is that it should be seen in a very, very integrated manner. So which one? I use more than 100 buildings are built with mud or earth, but people like those buildings, so they wanted those buildings. So it depends on whom you are building for. To understand that somebody in a city might build a mud house or earth house to say that I am living in an earth house, but a villager might not want it. So it depends on that. Of course, it can be economical, but we have to see what it is. Mud has to be transported for a long distance, it can become uneconomical. So when you stabilize the mud blocks, the cost can go up. The productivity you have to supervise. You can't buy mud blocks even in Pondicherry. Straight away go to a place and order. Say, I want to build a house, 2,000 mud blocks, I will buy. No, there is no place in India where you can buy it. I don't go ahead. No place. So what's sustainable? You understand what I mean? What is the point? It has to be made available to the people for them to do it. It's not. We have to move away from isolated experiments, isolated architects working. We have to move into a much larger thing where we have to influence the energy generation. That's the time, because we don't have time. We have to change our building practice completely. It has to happen in the next. If I say it should have happened 5 years ago, but we are still building in a conventional way, which is adding to the global warming. I did not take a class on that. I wanted to stress on what I was doing and what should be the approach. But it's for you to go and do research on it and tell. Any other questions?
So actually, I have 3 questions. If you don't mind.
One by one you
One
ask.
by one. So the first question, you're saying that you're using eucalyptus wood. Now, when I was practicing briefly in Delhi, and there is a trend there. I'm not sure if it is across. Especially when you go to all your material exhibitions, there is Canadian wood, or Canadian timber, which is being promoted heavily. And that I understand that it is a sustainable material, but when you look at how they're importing the logs and importing the timber, does it remain sustainable?
Okay, there are two. One first I will take the Canadian thing. In all Scandinavian countries and countries like Canada and even US, they have huge plantations. So they are cutting the trees and again growing it again. So it is very sustainable. They are not cutting virgin forests and trying to do it because there are strict laws and controls in those countries. Only what happens in Puerto Rico or Ethiopia, Ghana, Nigeria, we get teak and all those things, but it is not, the local community doesn't get anywhere. Trees are cut, somebody sitting in UK or in US is making money out of it. You understand? But these countries, it is a plantation is a science, which is what my argument, we should grow more trees because that only will reverse the trend of it. Now coming to eucalyptus, why we use eucalyptus? When I say eucalyptus, the price of eucalyptus is 1/20th of that of teak. But if you look at building, the eucalyptus as a timber, as a building material, there are so many parameters. If you look at the properties of eucalyptus, most of the properties of eucalyptus is better than that of teak. Like, for example, the bending strength, or what uses a column, durability, all these things are much, much higher than the teak. The problem with eucalyptus, you just cut the timber and just, it comes out of the sawmill, it just bends. Because it doesn't have the dimensional stability. When you make a window shutter, dimensional stability is an important factor. When you make a furniture piece, dimensional stability is an important factor. But when you use timber for columns, as a column, when you use timber as a beam, dimensional stability is not an important factor. Because I've written books on timber. One of the books INCAT has published it. I studied because to do this, you had to do your own research because nothing is available on different species. And the way I started was looking at the indigenous knowledge of the people. And one of the examples I give in many of the classes on timber, I start with a question. Do you know the timber which is used for burning dead bodies? All across India, it is one timber which is used. Anybody know timber which is used for burning dead bodies? Sandalwood is one, but everybody cannot afford. Only Rajiv Gandhi or Indira Gandhi, then Jayalalitha or MGR has to send the timber. What other timber is used? Mango. Yes, mango is used for burning dead bodies. All across India. There is even in some places when a child is born, you plant a mango tree, very eco-friendly principle. And when the person dies at the age of 20 or 50, the same mango tree is cut for burning his dead bodies. Now this shows mango and sandalwood has a common property. What is the common property? You will not find in Google. This is our indigenous knowledge system. What is the common? Why is mango and sandalwood used for burning their bodies? Anybody? Sandalwood has a smell, yeah. No, nothing to do with the smoke. Huh? No, burning tamarind, which is also a toast, has much high calorific value compared with mango. Huh? No, burning slowly is not the criteria. Huh? Smell is not the criteria. If you are grown in a village, grew up in a village, you would have both answer.
Is it a religious ritual?
No, nothing to do with the religion. But it is a system which is there for thousands of years. Why? It is used. I will give the answer, I don't want to go, more questions might be there. See, mango, sandalwood burns while it is freshly cut because of the oil in it, sandalwood oil. You cut a sandalwood, it has the smell, it will burn instantly. Any other timber, 60% of it is water. It has to dry. So that is why in the villages, that's why I said, if you know how when a freshly cut tree will not burn, the mango tree burns because of the resin. So that is why I said, when a child is born, you cut the tree and then use it for burning the dead body. But now you use various other species. So this is our traditional knowledge system. So each timber has a purpose. So you can't use, there is no universal timber. So So each timber, when you make a timber for making furniture, the grains is very important, smooth finish is important, lightweight is important. So that is why teak and rosewood is used. So each purpose requires a requirement. So you have to look at using materials from a completely different perspective when you look at sustainability. Each of the building materials. So I just gave an example. So you have to look. So we studied the requirements of the materials. We did the reverse engineering kind of thing. And we started, so we use extensive timber in our buildings, but everything we use cheap is very expensive. Economic sustainability might not be there. And we use recycled timber also. So it's very sustainable. Already it is there, so that is what we use. Okay, any other questions? You have one more question. Yeah.
So, the second question is regarding some traditional houses. These houses are almost 200 years old in the village where I'm studying. But there are several issues. The family that is living here is a low-income family. Originally, I don't know if I should get into it. Originally, the house was a common house. We used to have a large courtyard. Now they just have a very small section of the house where they're living with their children. The house, if you look at it from an environmental perspective, if you say it's got a sloping roof, the walls are thick enough, the timber is very good quality, but the rooms themselves are very small and very dark, and now they are of the opinion that they need a modern house, and when we try and tell them that no, you should preserve or try and preserve the heritage or maybe reuse materials, it is very difficult to convince them that there is actual historical or heritage value.
Yeah, I understand this is a problem, but it is important that for you to convince the client that if the inside is dark wood below windows. Understand? If it is not clean, use a broom or so you can make old houses where the examples which were used in Mustiris and Alapi, where we work with historic buildings, we had to convince the community. And in both these projects, although it's a highly supported project by the government, we are not bringing in legislation. And one of the examples I quote is that Fort Kochi. I know Fort Kochi in 1984, when I used to go there when I was then. And I know what is Fort Kochi now, how much heritage has been destroyed. Now, many of you go and see it as a historic place, but I know how much heritage has been destroyed. What has happened 20 years ago? The laws came, legislation came. What many people, when the legislation came, they said we will not get permission to build another one. Many people torn down their houses and built new buildings. Many people, the old house will have 4 bedrooms, they demolished and built 15 bedroom hotels. Because tourism is booming. Now if you look at the person who have been keeping their heritage houses with 5 bedrooms, we want to rent one room 15,000 rupees a night. Those buildings where they demolished their whole house and put up a hotel 5-story building with 15 rooms, they will get 2,000 rupees a day.
But I think this is more to do with the income level, because these people will not, so they are sustaining themselves in
Yeah, we can do it at the end. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So this is regarding the mud and thatch houses, the one that we already showed. So this is something that I have seen on site, where especially the lower income groups, we used to live in houses like that. The people who are slightly better off, some of
Because you
them,
can carry houses.
they have preserved their houses. That here, all those houses are demolished. They are now simple structures, flat roof, RCC structures that you see around. Is there merit in their way of thinking? Because it is not for us to tell them how to live.
Yeah. I agree. See, the problem with the thatched houses, I also done thatched houses in some projects. They are thermally comfortable. Tiled houses also thermally comfortable, might not be the extent of thatched houses. The thatch has to be replaced once in a year or once in 4 years, depending on what you ask you to use. So economic sustainability you have to look at. So, those who are putting up thatched houses purely for, they are not economical anymore. In some places it will be economical. Some of the thatch houses which you have in Indonesia, the thick thatch grass roofs, that will last for about 20 years. But otherwise you have to, when you look at the replacement cost once in a while, it might not be economical, and the nuisance value attached with it. So in the olden days, the thatch was available everywhere. We did not have a price. Now it is to get the people who make this thatch, to do the roof, everything has become a problem. So when you look at sustainability, you have to look at the life cycle assessment also. So all those things matters. So thatch might be, initial cost might be slightly cheaper, but it might not be good in the long run. If you have to replace every 3 years, 4 years, it's an expensive object. To understand that, that is why. For example, the tiles which I said I used at Rosol, that half-round tiles, nobody uses in the present day. When I pick up the tiles from my old house which is demolished, they say, please take the tiles away. Nobody wants. What did you use the tile for? So if the transportation cost they can save, they are happy. So my cost of when I did that resort is 3.5 rupees a square foot, because I paid 35 paise for one tile, my cost. And 3.5 rupees a square foot. Cost of mango tiles alone. So since it's a recycled material, my initial cost has come down to 3.5 rupees. I'm just trying to. So that is why I said, recycled materials is always, because the market, the recycled market works, only the poor people will go and buy an old door and window. We can buy most of the buildings, I use old doors and windows. So this is the cheapest, and it's cheaper than even the best, even the most low cost housing. I can show it with figures, and because I've done both. I've done mud buildings also, I've done thatch houses also. So this is the cheapest. But when you recycle the whole building, it is even more economic, more sustainable. That is the argument which I was trying to make. And it's nice because people are happy, proud of their heritage. And that is the example which I get, the mosque. They were not, now they are very proudly saying that we are going to restore the mosque to its old state. They're collecting money. I'll tell one more story at the time. See, that mosque which I gave the proposal, I gave this proposal to them and they said they will collect the money. It's a Muslim, mosque is a Muslim. The oldest mosque, everybody wanted to do the project. They approached one NRI, very rich person. And the project will cost 20 to 25 crores. At that time, the cost of the project is 20 crores. So they approached one NRI who said, I will sponsor the entire mosque. 20 crores. And, but he said, I don't like the building, the design which I have given. So he said, I have to employ another architect. So I don't know about the story. One year I don't hear from the mosque people. I thought that they are collecting money. So one day the president of the mosque calls me, please Benny, please come for a meeting. So I said, next time when I come to Kerala, since it was not a site meeting or anything, I said I'll come at 6:30, I land up. Surprisingly, normally only the president, secretary and treasurer or one committee member. This time the entire quorum was there, 20 people sitting across the conference table. And president is sitting at one tip, I was asked to sit there. So I was thinking, my imagination is that I'm being asked to discuss about the project. And the president shows me a drawing booklet, beautifully presented. So that architect and the design done, and shows me the design and says that what do you think about it? What would you say? And the president was very apologetic. He was very rich. He was very imposing. And we are getting 20 crores. We couldn't say anything. And we are very apologetic to you for having happened this. This is the president, the committee member. They know what work I've done. So they wanted to settle me in a decent manner. So I did not know what to say. They wanted me to tell an opinion. What they have done, instead of my proposal, they have put forward a 5-story mosque. They demolished all the early additions, put a 5-story mosque at the back. So they asked me, I was quite pin drop silence in the committee room. They asked me to tell. I don't want to say anything, but they say, please tell me something. And I said, In the 1950s, when your great-grandfathers built the minarets and the pool and the domes and everything, nobody knew about architecture. Nobody had any concern about heritage or conservation. And 1990s, when your parents built these concrete extensions and steel presses and everything, nobody knew about conservation and heritage. But in 2014, if you do the same kind of mistake, you are doing it nobly. And I said that it is not only the restoring the mosque which is important, restoring the context is also very important. 20 crores sitting on one side and this. So I said this is what the thing. So you are making and you are taking, this is what I said. Again, pin drop silence, nobody said anything. And I saw the president getting up from the seat and he said, we will go with Lenin's design. And everybody clapped. And because of that, the project was delayed from 2014 to 2019 because they need to raise 20 crores. And they said at that time, we will raise the money from the public of Kerala. We will not do it to a single person. And you have to understand, 20 crores and a Muslim architect designing. Here, there's a Christian. I mean, I'm not practicing Christian, but born as a Christian architect designing a mosque. And 20 crores, they overruled it. And we are just waiting for the Chief Minister's date to be inaugurating the working of program to start the conservation or the restoration of the mosque. So this kind of thing you have to convince and you have to tell how the people. So you approach your project with a simple sincerity. I mean, it's not, it's a great thing with those communities. I mean, they are the normal villagers and thing. They are not very, 20 crores on one side and they just said no. And now so I'm just giving. So you have to convince. We have always been lucky to convince the client and the community. We approach it with a different perspective. And I think, and a community awareness or community participation, you can consult a community, but that is very superficial. What we see as in Tarikambadi village especially, the community should have control over the decision. Then only participation is ensured. You understand what I'm trying to say? You consult the community, you take their opinion, you can show the plans to the community and say, I have consulted the community. It can be rated, but what we take as community participation is when the community has control over the decisions. And in both the Muslims and RFP projects, we have gone with the community participation, which is of a very high level where the community takes decisions. So this is very, very important to do. So we do what that is a multi-dimensional negotiation which is happening. Sometimes you will fail. I told only the success stories. There are so many failure stories as well. Any other question?
Story has a bad part also. So there might be certain limitations associated with this kind of building houses as well. When the population is growing, we are moving towards the high-rise houses. Then how can a timber building can be a solution to such kind of?
Good that you asked that question. You just Google, I don't have to listen, cross-laminated timber, CLT buildings. There are multi-story buildings done in UK, which is using timber. Instead of using concrete and steel buildings, there are multi-story buildings being built in UK. I've gone and seen at least 3 or 4 buildings. I put it as a Facebook post 3 years ago when I went and saw it. Just look at it. It's 3 years ago post, we didn't remember. I went and saw, I met at least 2 architects who are doing such buildings. So don't think that timber cannot be used for multi-story buildings. What I'm trying to say, use the 21st century technological know-how to solve the present day problems, but in a socially, culturally, economically, environmentally sustainable way. Not aided by the forces of profit which the developer wants to make. You understand what I'm trying to say? The kind of buildings which are coming up in Chennai, or there in Bombay or They are going to become vertical slums in 2 years. Why are we committing the same mistakes? US understood this in the 70s and 80s. J. Jacob wrote the book, The Death and Life of American Cities in 1968. Why are we committing the same mistakes again and again? You understand that? She wrote the book and she was a journalist. She wrote it, how the American suburbanism, there are so many books. I just quoted Jane Jacob, there are so many books. Because we need to look at things, what I'm trying to tell you, we need to look at things in a different perspective. Now we have to design these buildings with sustainability and sustainable environmental. The sustainability is a very important part. Otherwise, we are fighting a losing battle with a president like Donald Trump being in the lead. Yesterday there was a demonstration in Washington or New York, I think, used that Swedish Greta, some surname. She held a demonstration and made a speech asking, why are we doing this to the future? To us, this is the question which we are all going to face. Why are the future generation, why did we do towards us? Because this is something which is, we can't escape, and it's just around the corner. The floods and the natural disasters, I can give a talk on how those things, but this is not the topic. Okay, any other question?
Sorry,
Yeah.
due to time constraint, we won't be able to take more questions.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir, for your wonderful talk. Now, I would like to invite Professor N.C. Narayan to facilitate a speaker with a small gift. Thanks.